So today we're going to talk about the Nismo GT Pro differential and how to set it up and tune it. Now I'm going to be giving you some tricks here specifically for the Nismo diff, but there are a lot of things that apply to just about any Japanese limited slip. I guess I need to back up a little bit and talk about what a limited slip differential is. Now if you have a regular differential in the car, it lets the wheels spin at different speeds when you're cornering, and that way the car doesn't bind up or chatter. That's all pretty good, but one of the disadvantages to a regular differential is if you start getting wheel spin, all the torque is going to be sent to the wheel that's spinning more, and then pretty soon only that one wheel will be spinning. So you get your peg leg or one tire fire thing going on, and you lose half the traction. This is terrible when you're trying to do a drag launch or even when you're autocrossing or on the road course, because your inside wheel is going to spin. And if you're trying to drift, it makes drifting almost impossible to do. So the limited slip is your friend. Now, why they call it a limited slip differential is it limits the amount of runaway that you can have in between your wheels. So it divides the torque up more equally on either side, and when you launch or you're driving, both wheels could share the driving torque, and one wheel can't run away with all of it. The way the limited slip works is it uses clutches on either side of the spider gears, and those clutches are engaged and they resist the slip. Now what's really cool about most Japanese limited slips is they're what you call a Salisbury type differential, and they actually have ramps and cams that the more one tire wants to run away and peg leg, the more it'll resist the tendency to do that. And how it works is I'll show you right here. So you have your basic components of the limited slip diff right here. The main thing is the case. Now the case contains all the parts of the diff. The case actually bolts to the ring gear, and the ring gear is the thing that gets spun by the pinion gear, and so the differential case spins round and round. And your axles go into what you call the side gears. Now there's one for each axle, and you have your spider gears. So in the conventional differential, all you have is your spider gears and your side gears. They're in the case. One axle goes on one side, one goes in the other, and you can see how they allow differential action. So I'm turning this side and I'm holding the other side still, and there's absolutely no resistance to differential action. So that's why when you start burning out with one wheel, all the power goes to that side. Now with the limited slip, you actually have these clutches that resist the tendency to do that. And how they work is, on a conventional differential, you just have your spider gears. But if you notice on this one, the cross shafts that hold the spider gears, they actually have like a cam-shaped end. So you can see how it is irregular shape, and it has these like surfaces on there that act like cams. Now the cams actually register into the pressure rings, which are on either side of the spider gear assembly on a limited slip. Now this Nismo limited slip is really cool because you have two sets of receiving slots. Now, the way the cams work is, if you look at this side, for instance, you see the slot is shaped like a V, and the cross-shaft cam goes in there, and it's kind of equal on both sides. Now, this is what you call a two-way differential. So when you put it together like this, the limited slip action is equal on acceleration and deceleration. So you have lock when you accelerate, you have lock when you decelerate. And what it does is when your side gears here are on either side and your axles want to spin at different speeds, you see how the cams ride up in these slots. It actually spreads these apart. What it's doing when it's spreading apart is putting more force on the clutches here. Now these clutches are on either side of the pressure rings. They're a multi-disc wet clutch. These clutches are what cause the resistance to one side running away and causing one tire fire. So when you get even traction, this is spinning around and there's no wedging action. And you go around the turn and you're not getting wheel spin, there's no resistance to differentiating. But when one side runs away, you see how the cross shaft wants to spread them apart. When it spreads apart, it puts clamping on these clutches, which lock the wheels together and give you your limited slip action where both wheels are spinning. Now what you notice is there's two sets of slots. This set of slots is for a two-way, and if I move it into this other set, this is a 1.5 way. The way a 1.5 way works is you get full lock and acceleration and half lock and deceleration. So when you're on the gas, you get full lock. When you're decelerating and coasting in the corner, you get half lock. And what's good about that is, let's say you have full lock. On a lot of cars, depending on your setup, if your differential is pretty fully locked, when you turn in, it's going to resist turning in and you can get understeer when you first turn in. Also, if you're right at the edge of control and you're like drifting, when you have a fully locked differential and you lift off the gas suddenly, the car is going to want to come around and drift. Now, this is really good if you're drifting, but if you're not intending to drift, it could get a little scary. So this is really good for an experienced driver that wants all the lock he can get and can make use of it. It's also good for if you're drifting, because you could lift throttle, get the car to go sideways. If you're a road racer and you're experienced, you can lift the throttle and use it to rotate the car, because it'll come off the throttle and the tail of the car will come out. The 1.5 way is kind of more forgiving, so you only have half lock. The car will tend not to understeer so much on corner entry, and it'll be a little bit less snappy for oversteer when you lift the throttle. Most of us feel that the 1.5 way is better for road racing and autocross, and 2-way is definitely better for drag racing and drifting, but opinions differ. In Nismo, you have the option to experiment. So the way this works is you have your clutches and they fit into the differential case. So in the clutch pack you have your drive clutches and the driven clutches. The drive clutches are splined on the outside, and those splines go into the differential case and they engage it like so. The driven clutches, the splines are on the inside and they register on the side gears like that. And they stack up into the differential case, one on each side. And the side gear goes in. So half are driven by the case, the other half are driven by the axle. So the clutches and the side gear are in the case like that. Next, the pressure ring goes in. This is the friction surface that pushes on the clutches, and that engages into the differential case. Come on. Then your spider gear assembly, so you have to decide whether you want 1.5 way or 2-way. That goes in there. Then your next the next gear. Then the other pressure ring, and then your other clutch plates go on top, and the whole works bolts together. Now, if you want to do further tuning on the differential, these are some tricks we do. So you have your clutches, and with all these clutches, you have pretty strong differential action with the limited slip. And sometimes in road racing, You know, if you have big sticky tires and a lot of downforce, like you're running real slicks, you probably want your diff to lock up pretty hard because your tires can actually, you know, take all of that, and they're gummy and they're sticky, and you need every bit of lockup you can. But like, let's say you're running a street class car where you have limited tires by the rules, and you can only run, you're not allowed to run a wide body, so your sizes of tires are limited. Your differential can overpower the tires in that case, and you have too much aggressive differential action, so the car will want to drift and corner exit when you start giving it gas. In this case, you might want to have a less aggressive differential action. So what we do is we deactivate clutches. So what this means is you can get some of these drive clutches, and you kind of take them out of the stack and you stack them next to each other. So I just deactivated 2 sets of clutches so they're not rubbing against each other, and this will make your lock less aggressive. So if you take 2 out on one side, you can take 2 out on the other. Now generally the most I ever take out is like 2 on each side. More than that, the differential doesn't work as well. It can burn up and get hot. But 2 is generally pretty safe, especially on low-powered cars with skinnier tires. This makes the differential action smoother. You're able to get on the throttle sooner, and it doesn't upset the balance of the car so much. The other trick to tuning is, this is where the Nismo diff has a really neat feature. And it's in the spider gear assembly. Let me take that out and show you guys how it works. So let me take the gears off. So here's your cross shaft assembly. And the Nismo diff has a really neat feature where you can adjust the amount of lock that the diff has. It has a feature that allows you to adjust the preload of the clutches to, so you can run 60, 80, or 100% of lock. What you do is you pull out an axle, put a socket on this nut, and you can turn it. And as you can see, this is like the 60% slip setting. This is 80, and this is 100. So each one, this distance gets more, and it pushes on the clutches harder and adds more preload. So that's another great deal of flexibility the Nismo diff has. Another differentials, you have like cone springs putting pressure on the clutches, and some manufacturers like OS Geekin, they have 3 different cone springs with different tensions that you could put in there. Or some differentials like Cats, they don't really have that kind of adjustment, but you can put shims behind the clutch and add more preload on it that way. And you can shim it to add more preload and increase this distance here. So those are tricks where you can adjust just about any differential that way. The other tuning trick that we do is we WPC the differential case right here where the clutches ride on, the pressure rings where the clutches ride on, and the clutches themselves. You can kind of see the finish here. It's that WPC lustrous, super smooth finish. Now a lot of you guys that have mechanical high performance limited slips, you know the feeling, like they feel like they're ratcheting when you go around a turn, and they clunk and ratchet and shake the car. And sometimes you put a lot of LSD additive in, and that smooths it out for a while, but it could still clunk. Sometimes if you have a car that's sensitive, all that clunking and ratcheting when you're driving in the road course can actually make the car lose traction, especially if you can hear the tires chirping when you're cornering. So in this case, when we WPC everything, it makes even a really aggressively set up race diff smooth as silk. It's kind of like you have a ton of LSD additive in, but it's because everything is working together so smoothly. So you put one bottle of LSD additive, you WPC the insides, and you'd almost think it's a stock diff, except it works good. That's a lot of the tricks we do when setting up a diff. Some peculiarities of Nissan diffs, like if you have a 350Z or a 370, they don't have very good air circulation under the car, so the diff can get really hot. And when it gets really hot, the clearances can change, and you can even have things like the bearing seize because everything's expanding, or the ring and pinion gets, the lash gets off because everything's expanding and hot. And it could get to the point where the differential locks up even. And I mean, I've had that happen in the car I was driving. That wasn't fun. So, a lot of times you need a cooler if you're really serious. But, if you're a casual track day guy, we really recommend a higher capacity back cover. Now, Z1 Motorsports makes a great one for these diffs. It's billet. It has baffling to keep the oil from sloshing around very much and to keep the oil from sloshing out your breathers. It's also drilled and tapped, so if you did want to run the diff cooler, it's really easy. This is a great piece, and if you drive your 350 or 370 on the track, this is almost a mandatory thing to get. That's kind of the whole thing in a nutshell. This is how the Nismo Pro diff works, and some tips on how to set up your differential no matter what brand you have. So if you like this content, be sure to hit the subscribe button. We appreciate that. Helps us out. Be sure to comment and ask questions. We'll do our best to get back to you. That helps us out too. And if you want more content like this, you could also go to MotoIQ.com. And we have all kinds of awesome technical articles about these same subjects on there. And if you want us to set up your diff, you can go to MotoIQ Race Services, click on the button, fill out the form, and we'll be getting back to you.